The Thing is one of the most broken characters in all of Marvel Rivals. After picking him up and learning him, I quickly grinded to Eternity, and it wasn't even difficult because this character is actually busted and people don't know. That's why in this comprehensive guide, we're going to break down the basics, his abilities, give you tips and tricks on everything, and then give you some advanced stuff that you can utilize in your games to get Eternity in the easiest way imaginable. Now, I actually stream 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at 11 a.m. CST, and a lot of people don't know. So if you could go to my Twitch and press that follow button, I would really appreciate it. And you can ask me any questions you want about Rivals or just hang out, and I can't wait to see you there. Now we're going to quickly go over the Thing's abilities. First off, his primary is going to be a double jab that does 40 damage per, and then there's his alternate, a rocky jab that does 90 damage. It's going to give him 50 bonus health that doesn't stack, and it has a absolutely massive freaking hitbox. Like, this thing goes incredibly far and incredibly high. You can even hit flyers with it at times, and really, you're going to be able to swing this through a lot more people than you think. And this is really important because this will pierce through shields. So, if there's two shield tanks in front of you, like a Mag and a Strange, and you right-click Rocky Jab through them, you're going to hit them both, and you're going to hit anyone right behind them as well, getting you ult charge and massively doing damage through all of these barriers, which is just a little bit crazy. But we'll go into more detail how to abuse that in a little while. Now, you're going to want to spam the alternate fire the majority of the time. It's going to do actually more individual damage than the stone haymakers, your primary, and of course it's easier to hit, it has further ranges, and it gives you a little bit of bonus health. So there's a lot of benefits there, but you can use the primary to follow up on a target that you're guaranteed to kill. And because of this really large hitbox and the fact that you actually lunge slightly forward, you can play edges or corners, and that's typically where you want to position, and you're going to slide your body slightly around the corner and use this alternate fire, this rocky jab, so that you're going to be able to swing through the corner, hit a whole bunch of people, back up, do it over and over again, keeping yourself in cover and protected most of the time, but still consistently getting damage out on the front line. And you're going to see examples of this in pretty much all the footage that is going to be used in this guide. I basically do this all the time, and it's what you should do because you don't want to be playing out in the open, because the less you're forced to leave, the more health you have, the longer you can stay, the faster you can build ultimate, the more damage you could do. So positioning in a way that allows you to trade blows without taking a ton of damage is a really big deal. Now, the first ability we got to talk about is called YANCY Street Charge. This is his pin and slam. It's going to give him 100% movement boost. It's going to last for 5 seconds. And the charge itself damage is going to be 30. The slam is going to be 20. And it's going to put enemies in an immobilization zone that's going to do 15 damage per second. Now, this is a crazy broken ability. Probably the reason that the Thing is so strong, because you get to slam people and do a crazy amount of damage, 50 right off the bat if you get the charge plus the slam, and then it's going to do some additional damage over time, plus the fact that they are not going to be able to move. It's going to prevent the use of movement abilities, so most of the time they're just going to be stunned and take a right click. So you're thinking 50 damage right off the bat, plus an additional 90 damage. 140 damage is just a crazy amount of damage that you could do just with a simple burst out of nowhere. And if anyone's out of position, if any DPS is on the front line, any character really is out of position, you could stun them, output a crazy amount of damage to them, and make it so that your teammates can follow up. Really, really, really broken. In addition to that, you get 200 HP that fades after use. This is going to keep you alive and let you get out of some situations, or you can pivot in a bit aggressively and you'll still have a bit of extra health as you go in. But one thing I would suggest is change this from toggle to hold, so that the second you let go of the button, you're going to immediately slam down. This can actually allow you to utilize some combos that I think are pretty good. Like, one of the combos I like to use from close range is I'll do a right click punch, a charged stone haymaker. Then I'm going to jump and press my YANCY Street Charge. This ability, what happens is if you jump right next to somebody and instantly release it, is it's going to give you the credit for the charge hit, and it's going to give you the credit for the slam, and it's just really simple to do. You don't have to do it this way if you have a little bit of distance, but I find it's easier to do it this way if you're right next to somebody. Then, when they're slammed up in the air, you're going to charge punch them again into 2 primaries. So this is going to do almost 300 damage altogether, and it's a really great way to just burst someone out of nowhere. Very, very strong. The fact that you could just be like, oh, hey, you've taken a little bit of damage, I'm just going to wombo combo kill you, out of nowhere. Just insane. Now, you can use this ability pretty liberally as well. Any DPS that's slightly out of position in your team's backline, or just a diver in general, you are going to prevent movement abilities. So whether you're hitting a Spider-Man, whether you're hitting a Magic, whether you're hitting a freaking Black Panther, the follow-up from your team and just preventing them from moving for a little bit is typically enough to get them killed. And the hitbox on this is really forgiving, so they just have to be kind of remotely near you, even behind you. You're still going to hit them, and divers are going to literally hate playing against you. Now, your next ability is Embattled Leap. This is going to be your jump to your team ability. It's going to have 2 charges. It's going to last for 3 seconds, and it's going to give 30% damage reduction to yourself plus the target that you latched onto. Now, I know that this is primarily your get-out-of-jail-free card, the ability that you use to jump back to your team, but the damage reduction is really underrated on this ability. Being able to save your teammates sometimes from like a mag ult, a storm ult, certain dives, it's extremely powerful, and whenever the enemy team is looking to do something proactive into your backline, I would look to use this at times, just applying it on a couple of people and keep them alive while you kind of endure the storm, and then you go back out as a team. But one of the reasons why playing solo Thing is so hard is that there's not a front line to jump back to. Like, ideally, when you go in, you pin in, or you go make a play, you can easily turn around and have someone within range that you could jump back to, which is going to be your secondary tank, right? Especially a mag or a Strange. But if you are solo tanking, there's no guarantee that you will even have a front line to jump back to at all. Your supports will be positioned way too far back, and your DPS might be flanking or whatever. So you're going to have to be a little bit extra cautious if you do that. I don't necessarily think that Thing is a great solo tank in the first place, but if you do want to run him, and there are some situations where you can, you got to be really careful when you don't know where your team is going to position, and in some cases, having like a more frontline DPS like Bucky at least to jump back to is nice to have in that kind of comp. Now, one of the things I will say is a big mistake I see a lot of Thing players make is that they go out too far and they're not really thinking about where their teammates will be, especially if your team is being attacked or pushed back. You have to think in your mind, hey, I can't just trade backlines here, because the problem is if they go into my backline and I go into their backline, my backline's going to back up. My team is going to back up. I'm not going to have anyone to jump to. And unless you're going to be able to secure everything by yourself, it's really going to be hard for you to get out of that situation. You're not going to have a movement ability after you use that pin. And this is why the Thing is far better at peeling. And what I mean by that is he's far better at, instead of, I'm going to go trade backlines out, I'm going to go push their backline where they push mine, I'm going to go back to my backline and punish them for jumping on it. You know, I'm going to play the anti-diver. I'm going to force a brawl at close range engagement. I am not going to leave my team to go do something in their backline almost ever. That's not really what you want to do unless you have like another DPS with you and you have your shatter or whatever. So keep that in mind. And the last thing I'll say is that you can actually charge your punch, your haymaker, your right click while you're traveling. So you press your travel button and then you start charging your punch. So the second you land, you're getting a punch out. You want to basically do this every single time for free. And one of the things I'll also say with that charge punch is you're surprised where you hit enemies and who you hit. So sometimes when you're just waiting around, you'll just keep swinging it and swinging it and swinging it. Like, for instance, I grappled onto my front line. I charged a punch, not seeing any enemies, but by the time I got there, I actually hit somebody with it because someone swung around the corner and I just barely nicked them. So it's just a good habit to get into. Now, of course, we got to talk about his ultimate, CLOBBERIN time. This is going to do 100 damage, and it's going to stun for 2.5 seconds with a mass amount of space that it's covering. So it's really hard to miss this ultimate, and it's incredibly strong. Similar to ultimates like Groot that are setup ultimates, that's what this is. If you can combo this, it's going to guarantee kills. If you have follow-up, you're going to be able to just kill people that are just standing there completely unable to move, and it's just super strong. If it's not baiting out a defensive ult, it's just wiping the enemy team. That's how good it is. And one of the things about this that's so powerful is that it builds incredibly fast. So not only is it just a rather cheap ultimate to generate, one of the things that's really important is that because you're able to swing through enemy shields and stuff, when you right click and hit 3 people or 4 people, you're getting a crazy amount of ult charge, like really fast. And this gets really out of hand, especially when we talk about defensive ultimates. So let me give you an example of what I went through in one of my games on my climb to eternity. I popped my ultimate at the start of a fight. So I popped it, I shattered 3 people, and it forced them to use a Luna Snow ultimate. Now, my Luna Snow ults in response. So they have a Luna Snow ultimate, I have a Luna Snow ultimate. Everyone's been through this situation. It happens all the time where nothing dies because everyone's immortal, right? But what can you do on the Thing when everyone's grouped up and they can't die? you right click and right click and right click and right click. You're constantly using your haymaker on them over and over. And guess what? You're hitting 4 or 5 people because everyone's stacked up on the Luna Snow ultimate. So what happened after those 12 seconds at the end of the Luna Snow ultimate? I got another ult. The way that fights happen and play out directly enabled the thing to generate ultimates at a crazy fast pace, even more so than normal. And this is an incredibly common occurrence, and I want to make this clear. This is broken. I used my ultimate to bait out a Luna Snow ultimate, and I had my ultimate before she ended it. That's insane. It's so busted and strong, and one of the many reasons why you should be playing the thing. Now, also with this ultimate, you can technically block this with a shield like Strange, but he has to jump and angle it in a very particular way. I will say that it wasn't until I was playing in Eternity games that I had a single Strange block my ultimate. A lot of Stranges, I think, don't have the knowledge to or the reaction time, and I just shattered right in front of them and still got them. A lot of the time, though, you're going to be able to just get this off by going faster or stunning them into your ultimate. It makes it easier. And also, when we talk about certain payloads that have gaps underneath, you can actually shatter through it, and enemies are expected to be safe, but they're just really not. Now, the thing has a passive in Unyielding Will. This means he's immune to launch up, knockback, or other displacement effects. This is important to understand, meaning that he can't be thrown anywhere or moved anywhere, but he can still be stunned, slept, or frozen. So if you get hooked by a Bucky, for instance, you're not going to get pulled in, but you will be temporarily stunned in that position. Same thing with Wolverine. You'll also be able to be slept by Mantis all the same, or frozen by Luna Snow. So you can be stalled and stopped, but you're not going to be yanked around the map like most other tanks. Now, as for team-ups, he has the Cosmic Fastball, meaning he can throw Wolverine, and that's similar to the Hulk team-up. And then he has the second team-up, which is Cooperative Comrades. This is with Invisible Woman. It's going to be an ability you can activate that has a rather long cooldown, but is going to give him constant shield. It's nice overall and makes you a bit more tanky, but I will say it's not necessary to make the character good or bad. It's just like a little nice upside, and Invisible Woman's strong enough that you'll get it quite a bit. So I would say that it's nice to have, but it's not something so busted or essential that I would be asking for it or anything like that. Now that we laid out his kit and gave you tips and tricks along the way, let's talk about some tips that got me to eternity on the thing and some things you can use to get a leg up on your opponents. Let's first talk about strengths and weaknesses of this character. When is he best? When is he at his weakest? So first off with strengths, he's insane versus any dive character. We talked about that. Any mobility heavy character, he's going to be phenomenal against. He's the king of close range engagements, so he's going to be able to just stun them and output a lot of damage to them. However, there is one diver that I think you got to be worried about, and that's specifically Iron Fist, a character that can shred you in the right context, and if he manages to block your stun, it can be a bit difficult to deal with him, so I'd be careful of that. Remember, Iron Fist scales with HP, so he actually does a surprisingly lot amount of damage to you. Now, he's going to be insane versus double shield, even single shield, any shield. So, Strange, Mag, these are some of the best tanks in the game, and the thing absolutely farms these tanks like crazy. You're constantly swinging into them. You do not care about the damage they're dealing back to you because you're doing damage at a much more efficient rate that they cannot stop, and you're building ultimates much quicker as well. So, yeah, if they're playing double shield, you go out on the thing, you're just going to put so much pressure on them. I don't think I've ever lost a game where my opponent stuck double shield the entire way through. You just get to farm it over and over and over again. And then also, most brawls he's going to be good in. Any close range fights and engagements. There's a lot of characters that other tanks care about that he just does not. He doesn't really care about Wolverine in the same way that other characters do because he can't pull you away. Yeah, he's still going to do a lot of damage to you, but it's just like every other character. You just got to be a bit careful of that damage and you're perfectly fine. Characters like Bucky, you can get all up in his face. He can't kill you in time. He can't pull you out of the position or slam you back to his team. So no one's going to be able to displace you in that regard. So he just doesn't care about a lot of what the good characters are in the meta. And that's really, really great for him. That makes him so good in ranked because all these characters that people are abusing to get higher level are going to be farmed by you over and over again. And that's great. Now, he does have some huge weaknesses that I need to point out. And these ones are ones that are so bad that I would consider banning a lot of them if you can. Ideally, you ban everything that stops you and then you just win the game with ease. But outside of that, I would say there's only one character that you have to ban, if at all possible, and that's Groot. Groot is a nightmare for you because he can wall off your escapes, make it really, really hard for you to commit to anything because he can wall you off. And he doesn't fight in the same way that a double shield tank fights. He fights with his walls that actually do block damage at times, and he keeps his distance farther than you can actually deal damage. So the way that he plays a bit doesn't really line up well with you. So yeah, like while you can brawl him a bit, the idea here is that he's going to be able to trade damage at a reasonable rate to you, and then when you want to disengage, you can't because he's going to wall you off. So I would say ban him. Now, can you beat a Groot? 100%. You just have to come at it with angles. You have to be a lot more, you know, precise with your engagements, because if you get cut off from any choke point at all, you're just going to die. So you got to be super careful there. And yeah, he's the #1 biggest op for the thing for sure. Now, Rocket team up is another weakness of yours, especially Rocket plus Punisher. Sometimes Bucky can be a bit annoying, but it's mainly Punisher. Just a crazy amount of damage at you. Now, you can play around this a lot easier than Groot because you can just wait to engage, right? They pop the full auto. You just wait. You wait it out before you're aggressive, and then you're aggressive after the fact. I think that's a good, reasonable thing to do. But still, if you can help it, I think banning Rocket is actually perfectly fine here. I don't see a problem with it at all, and I think it's something that you could do. And then flyers can be a weakness. You can't interact with flyers, and high ground in general can be a bit tricky unless you have someone to help you get up there. So that's a complicated one. One of the things that you can do, though, if opponents are playing flyers, you just want to be more proactive on the front line, more aggressive. You're taking less damage on the front line, and so you need to make sure that the tanks are the ones that are taking the majority of the abuse so that your DPS get more lines of sight on flyers. Like, you could look up at those flyers all day. You can't do anything about them, but those flyers can't really stop you either. So I say kind of, it depends. If they're playing like mass flyers, it could be annoying with the mobility heavy tank you can't abuse, but most of the time I think you just focus on what you can actually control and make an impact there so that it helps the rest of your team. Let's talk about his play style. How should you play him in the neutral? What should be your play pattern? So first off, you're going to play every corner and you're going to punch around corners. We talked about that earlier. You're playing corner positions and you're sliding around those corners to constantly get swings in without tanking a lot of damage. You do not want to be standing in the open just consistently. You're going to eat way too much damage unless the enemy is already on the back foot or they're really focused on something else. Don't stand in the open. Don't just take a lot of damage and be forced to cycle out before you've gotten a ton of damage in and a ton of ultimate charge. Now, once you've created an advantage, though, the Thing is one of the best characters to pivot on a dime. And this is really great to do because it creates a ton of space. So let's say you kill one person and your team is pushing in. You can pin through the enemy team, slam, 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 slam down, do a ton of damage. The enemy team will turn to look at you and you immediately fly back to your team. So what you did there is you created a ton of pressure through the enemy team, and then when they turn their attention away from the rest of your team who's also pushing up, you come right back. This is a great play if you can communicate push, push, push when you have that advantage, because it turns a small advantage into a larger advantage very, very quickly. And that amount of ability to just pivot in, you take a small advantage and you just pivot in, you go from 0 to 100 out of nowhere. Very, very freaking strong. And yeah, you basically just can open up a fight just like that. And then, of course, oftentimes you're playing around your ultimate and generating it. So like when you know that they have a defensive ultimate, you typically want to be communicating either to combo with an ultimate that could kill through defensive ults, or you're gonna ult to bait out a defensive ult. And you could do that a lot because you're generating your ultimate just as fast as even the fastest supports. That's one of the things that the Thing can do that other tanks can't. Groot's not going to have his ultimate by the time the Cloak and Dagger has ult, but you will. You will. If you're actually effectively cycling here, you'll have it at the same time. So you can pop it, bait out an ultimate, and then right afterwards, your DPS are free and clear to pop their ult. And by the time that all happens, if your team fires more defensive ultimates, you might be at 50, 60%. So yeah, you just get to win or outpace supports in a crazy way, because you're still generating ultimates as they're using theirs, which is just really sick. Like the Luna Snow, you maybe were on an even pace with her ultimate, but once you popped yours, baited out hers, now you're going to build yours up to 40, 50, 60 while she's using her ult, and you're just going to outpace it, and that's a really, really strong thing to be able to do. Now, I want you to be creating as much space as possible, and one of the things that you should try to do on the Thing, especially in positions where there's a lot of high ground on certain maps, is if you can walk up there, you should. Like, it's really good to be able to walk towards a space, and no one wants to fight the Thing close range. So you're trying to force people off of spaces. So you walk to the high ground, anyone that's up there is gonna leave. So you just get to clear that high ground really easily. And at some point, you can force people to come to the objective. So like, let's say I force people off a high ground on a domination map, then I'm gonna go onto the objective, and I'm gonna kind of cover myself. I'm not gonna poke or look at the enemy or fight them at all. I'm gonna force them to come and try to contest me. Maybe that's at a corner, maybe that's behind a piece of cover, and when they do, they're playing into my effective range. Remember, the thing is the god at close range engagements, so whatever you can do to prevent enemies from shooting at you from high ground, from shooting at you from distances, you're gonna win all those fights every single time, and that's what you're really trying to do. And yeah, just the fact that you can't stop a high ground person looking at you or shooting at you is really important, so sometimes you need to position in a way that, you know, clears a space before you go and take the main objective. Now, I did want to talk about the best duos that you could run with the thing. I think the best by far is Magneto. Being able to bubble you in is really good. The Magneto ultimate plus Thingo, I think, is a good combo, but individually, they're also great ultimates as well. Magneto can deny a lot of powerful ultimates and could kill people through support ults and things like that, and the thing is really good at baiting out ultimates as well, so I think it just works really well together. They're just a great pairing in the ultimate department, but also Magneto is good at creating the spacing, so he's good against characters that want to play high ground positions or farther away. He can poke these people out so that you don't have to go up there yourself. You know, you get to be a bit more flexible with how you position as well. Magneto can hold down the front line, and he's always going to be there to jump to when you need him, so that's all reliable. But you know, the thing that you got to understand here, no pun intended, is that Magneto and the Thing together are even weaker against Groot than otherwise. So you got to ban Groot, or if the enemy is a competent Groot, like, it's going to be really hard to play the Thing and Mag. Now, Invisible Woman, also just a great duo. Just getting that synergy is nice. Invisible is also just really good overall. Just a great character. And sometimes when those flying characters are annoying, Invisible Woman being able to pocket your Hela or your other flyer to deal with the flyer is just great. You're bullying the front line, and you're able to do that better because of her. And then Invisible Woman gets to help your DPS, like, duel the things that you can't deal with. Another thing that I think is really good is being able to stun enemies into pulling them back into your team. Just constantly keeping people in positions they don't want to be, or pulling them out of positions they don't want to be in. That's just amazing. Really, really strong together, and I think coordination there goes a long way. And then one of the things that might surprise you is actually mobility-heavy DPS on the Thing. There's a lot of times where you'll get these big slams with no follow-up because you're a bit ahead of your team. Having a Psylocke or even a Star-Lord or someone that's going to follow up on this, even a Magic, like things that follow up with you, that you could also give damage percentage reduction before they go in. Like giving your Black Panther 30% damage reduction or your Magic 30% damage reduction before they engage is just crazy. And then the fact that they're always going to be around to follow up with any of your slams, really, really good in ranked play especially. So I definitely cannot recommend that enough. Now, if you really want to get better at the Thing, you need to evaluate every time you die, especially when you're dying before the rest of your team. Oftentimes, it was the positional mistake on your part in advance. Between your pin and the fact that you can jump to 2 people with 2 charges, you should hardly die. In fact, you should die very, very little relative to the rest of your team. So, yeah, evaluate your deaths as such. Change up your playstyle to meet what your teammates is providing you. You know, you can't be overly aggressive if your team is being passive, etc., etc. And you will have a crazy amount of impact on this character. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions down below. But this is my all-in Thing guide, and if you have any other suggestions about the next videos that we make, let us know in the comments down below. Hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the like, subscribe, check out my Twitch in the links down below, and I can't wait to see you next time.